She was not human, not entirely. And the men who came to understand this did not live long enough to warn anyone. Welcome back to the vault. I am the Warden. Tonight I have unlocked something sealed since 1894, The Great God Pan by Arthur Machen. You will understand, when it is finished, why certain doors were never meant to be opened, and why opening them anyway does not make you brave. It makes you responsible for what comes through. Machen wrote this in 1890. He was living in London, nearly destitute, spending his evenings in the British Museum reading the books no one else wanted to read. Books on mysticism, on Welsh folklore, on the old gods that preceded Christianity by centuries. He was 30 years old and convinced that behind the visible world there was something else. Something that the Romans knew about, something that the Welsh hill country still remembered. He wrote this story in a single sustained act of controlled terror, and when it was published, reviewers called it depraved, vile, morbid. Oscar Wilde praised it. Lovecraft read it and was never quite the same. He was right about what was there. He was wrong to name it. Imagine the Welsh borderlands. A country house on a hillside above a long valley. The sun going down red and cold over the mountains. The smell of the great wood above, pine and shadow and something older than either. Two men walking the terrace in the last light, one of them holding a secret 20 years in the making, the other holding considerable doubt, and in the house behind them, a young woman named Mary, who has agreed to something she does not fully understand. The door is open. Come down. Begin. Dr. Raymond had spent 20 years preparing for this night. He called it transcendental medicine. His colleagues called it quackery. He did not care what they called it. He had reached his goal 5 years ago, and every day since had been a preparation for the experiment he was about to perform on a young woman named Mary, a woman in his care, a woman who trusted him, a woman who did not know that trust, in the hands of the wrong man, is the most dangerous thing in the world. Clark, the witness he had invited, was less certain. He looked at the house, the laboratory, the evening, and felt that peculiar unease of a man standing at the edge of something he cannot name and cannot quite bring himself to walk away from. Raymond's theory was simple, in the way that the most catastrophic ideas always are. The brain, he believed, contained a physical mechanism, a switch, essentially, that confined human perception to what we think of as the visible world. Turn that switch, remove the limitation, and the person behind those eyes would see the reality that underlies everything, the world behind the world, the truth behind the shadows. He called it seeing the God Pan. He had convinced himself this was a gift. He had not thought carefully enough about what a human mind might do upon receiving it. The operation was brief. Raymond worked in the laboratory with the precision of a man who had practiced this procedure in his imagination 10,000 times. Clark sat in the shadows and watched, and at some point, he could never quite account for the transition. He slipped into a half-dream. A summer day 15 years ago, a wood and heat and the smell of flowers, and for one moment, standing in that dream, he felt the presence of something at the edge of the clearing. Something that was not a man and not a beast and not anything he had words for. Then the darkness took it. He woke to Raymond saying calmly, "It is done. I am going to fetch Mary." Mary walked into the laboratory in a white dress, and Clark looked at her face, and her face was peaceful. Then Raymond administered the compound, and they waited, and Mary began to change. Not physically, not at first. It was her expression that went wrong. Something moved behind her eyes, something that was looking at things Clark could not see, and the look on her face became first wonder, and then the look you see on the face of a person who has looked at something that cannot be looked at, and whose mind is already going, already cracking, already coming apart from the inside, and there is nothing to be done. There was never anything to be done, and Raymond stood there with his compound and his 20 years and watched what he had made happen. Mary never recovered her reason. She lay on her bed for months. She died, eventually, 9 months after the experiment. 9 months, giving birth to a child. The child's name was Helen V. Raymond sent the child away to the Welsh countryside, to a farmer's family near the old Roman road that runs through the hill forest. He told them to let her do as she liked. He knew already what he had done. He simply found he could not bear to be near it. The next chapter of this story belongs to Mr. Clark, who in the years after the experiment had tried very hard to forget what he had seen and failed at it completely. By winter evenings, he found himself returning to a bureau in his study, where he kept what he called his memoirs to prove the existence of the devil, a collection of strange cases, documented testimony, accounts of things that did not fit the world as officially understood. He had stopped attending seances. He had stopped investigating. He was trying to be a normal man with a normal life. He was not succeeding. One night, reading through his collection by candlelight, Clark came to an account told to him by a friend, a doctor named Phillips, of events that had occurred in a Welsh village some years earlier. A girl named Helen V had arrived in the village as a child, olive-skinned and foreign-looking, given to long solitary rambles in the old hill forest. A local boy had followed her one afternoon and seen her in a forest clearing with what he described, as best he could, as a strange, naked man. The boy ran home screaming. Weeks later, he saw a stone face above a doorway, a Roman head, a fawn's head, and the sight of it put him into convulsions from which his mind never fully recovered. Clark had put an inscription at the end of the account, "Et diabolus incarnatus est, et homo factus est," and the devil was made flesh and was made man. Time passes. The story moves to London. A man named Villiers emerges from a restaurant one evening in the gaslit dark and is approached by a beggar. He recognizes the beggar, an old friend from Oxford named Herbert, a man who had once had money, land, a house in Dorset, a man who is now a ruin. Herbert tells Villiers he had married a girl, the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He will not say much about what followed. He says only that she corrupted him, body and soul, that what he had seen and heard in her company haunted him in ways he cannot speak of, that he sold everything, the fields, the woods, the dear old house, and she took all of it, and then she left. Villiers gave Herbert some money and sent him away. He says that when the man was gone, he had to gasp for breath. Herbert's presence had felt like standing next to something cold that had taken the shape of a person. The woman Herbert had married was named Helen V. She had also gone by the name Helen V of the Welsh village account. What Villiers did not know yet, what Clark already knew and was trying not to know, was that Helen V was also the child born in Raymond's laboratory on the night of the experiment, the child of a woman whose mind had been destroyed so she could see a god, and of whatever it was she had seen. If this transmission has your attention, the like button, use it. It helps more than you might expect. A gentleman was found dead in the area of a house in Paul Street, a house that had belonged to a Mr. and Mrs. Charles Herbert. Cause of death: the doctor at the inquest said the man had died of fright, pure terror. He had never in his career seen features so hideously contorted. No marks of violence, no poison. Just a face that had looked at something and been unable to recover from the looking. The Herberts denied knowing the dead man and were discharged. The house was quietly avoided by the neighborhood after that. People knocked on that door less. They crossed the street. People have instincts about these things. They rarely listen to them in time. Villiers eventually obtained the key to the empty house at 20 Paul Street and went in alone. He described the experience afterward to Clark. The house was quiet, empty, dusty, normal in every visible respect, but in one room on the first floor he found himself unable to breathe. His teeth ground together without his knowing why. His limbs trembled. He said it felt like standing in the presence of something that was not there but had been there, and had left a mark on the air the way that a fire leaves a mark on a room long after the fire is out. He found a drawing in a pile of old newspapers, a sketch of a woman's face, drawn with great care, with great skill. He took it with him. He was in bed for a week afterward with what his doctor called nervous exhaustion. The drawing was of Helen Vaughan. Clark recognized her, not from the face, or not only from the face, but from the name written on the back. When he turned the paper over and read it, he nearly fell from his chair. He told Villiers to throw the portrait into the fire. He wrote him a letter. Throw the portrait into the fire. Blot out the story. Never give it another thought, or you will be sorry. I have peered over an abyss and drawn back in terror. What I know is strange and horrible enough, but beyond my knowledge there are depths and horrors more frightful still. Villiers did not throw the portrait into the fire. Men like Villiers never do. The suicides began in the spring. Lord Argentine was the first. Found by his valet, a cord around his neck, leaning forward from the bottom of his own bed, a man of wealth, good humor, ample reasons to live, and no apparent reason to die. Then Lord Swanley, then Collier Stewart, then Harries, then Crashaw. 5 men in a matter of weeks, all of them wealthy, all of them socially prominent, all of them having died in conditions of unmistakable and terrible deliberation. All of them having, as it emerged through private inquiry, dined recently at the house of a certain Mrs. Beaumont, a mysterious widow of great wealth, come apparently from South America, who had taken London society by something close to storm. Villiers traced Mrs. Beaumont through the back channels of London, through the criminal underground of Soho, through the disreputable addresses and false names and vanishings. The trail had many names: Miss Raymond, Mrs. Herbert, Mrs. Beaumont, all the same face, all the same woman who had moved through the decades leaving wreckage wherever she went. An artist named Meyrick had died in Buenos Aires after encounters with her, died of total systemic collapse, the doctor said, caused by severe shock. His legacy to a friend was a book of drawings of what he had seen. Austin opened that book and read one page and threw it across the room. He said he would never sleep soundly again. We will not be more specific than that. Villiers saw Crashaw leaving Mrs. Beaumont's house at 2 o'clock in the morning. He looked into Crashaw's face under the gas lamp on the street. He described what he saw to Austin the next day. He said he had looked into the eyes of a lost soul, furious lust and hate that was like fire, and the loss of all hope, and horror that seemed to shriek aloud though the man's teeth were shut, and the utter blackness of despair. Crashaw was found hanging from a tree in his own garden before sunrise. Villiers said, I do not know when he died, but when I passed him on the street, that man no longer belonged to this world. The last chapter is not narrated. It exists only as fragments, a physician's notes, written in Latin, in a great hurry, on a single page of manuscript. The doctor describes being summoned to a locked room in Ashley Street. He describes what he found there. He was a man of science. He tested his own pulse before and after to confirm he was not dreaming. He was not dreaming. What he saw clearly, without any confusion, with all his faculties operating at full capacity. He saw Helen Vaughan die, and in dying she did not die as a person dies. She dissolved. She moved backward through the forms, woman to man, man to beast, beast to something the doctor could not name and refused to write down in full. Just a note in Latin describing the process. The principle of life, which makes organism, always remained while the outward form changed. And the light within the room was not darkness. It was the negation of light, and at the end there was nothing. The last letter in the story is from Raymond, the surgeon who began everything, written to Clark, confessing what he knew. Mary, he says, was Helen Vaughan's mother. Helen Vaughan's father was whatever Mary saw on the night of the experiment. He had broken open the door of the house of life without knowing or caring what might pass through or enter in. He had known what he had done the moment the child was born. He had sent her away because he could not bear to be near what he had made. Helen V did well to bind the cord about her neck and die, though the death was horrible. I played with energies which I did not understand. You have seen the ending of it. Door is closed, for now. The experiment is over. The subject is dissolved. The file returns to the dark where files like this are kept. What was unlocked tonight will not be locked again. Arthur Machen wrote this story in 1890 and called it a warning dressed as fiction. A surgeon tears open the boundary between human perception and what lies beneath it. What comes through is half human at best, and it spends its brief time among us, doing what things from behind the veil do when they wear human skin, leaving ruin wherever they walk, and men who die with their faces contorted, and doctors who write their final observations in Latin because English does not have adequate words. This is the story that taught Lovecraft what cosmic horror actually was. That the worst thing about the darkness behind the world is not that it is indifferent, it is that it is interested. If this transmission found its mark, leave your mark in return. The like, use it. And I have a question for you. The surgeon Raymond believed he was giving Mary a gift, access to the truth behind the world. Was he wrong because the truth was dangerous? Or was he wrong because no human being has the right to give that gift to someone else without their full understanding of what it costs? Leave your answer below. I see all of them. New transmissions unlock every week. Subscribe to the Vault. The next door has already been selected. You will want to be here when I open it. Until then, stay in the dark.